This is mainly focused on the facility lore. In the 28th of November of 1964, a guy named Frederick founded an organization with federal permission of the government and some other things. This organization has an unknown name. It is supposedly Caryield, IEPC, but due to no one knowing what does IEPC mean or even if that was its real name, people just refer to it as facility, mainly because the only remaining things of that organization are some files called facility logs. These are 145 audio files recorded from 1993 to 2003. Okay, so the story of the facility between 1965 and 1992 is pretty much irrelevant to the EC main storyline. The only thing remarkable event between this dates is probably the Creation Facility's official organizational anthem in January 1 of 1966. Now let's get into April 14 of 1993. There are a few changes in the organization. The facility is now bigger and divided in 5 sectors, each sector in 4 sub-sectors, and each sub-sector in 20 rooms, all of this under the management of a guy named Kyle. In that specific date, a 26-year-old guy named Kevin wanted to work there, so they made Kevin pass through some psychological tests, and after 44 days, Kevin was declared as capable to work there and got hired. Kevin now worked as some kind of janitor. He was sometimes used as a laboratory rat or told to do some simple tasks like holding a thing on a specific place. Kevin worked like that for 9 years, gaining $1,008 per week, while making everyone have confidence on him and some obvious stuff. One day in June 25 of 2002, Kevin committed a little accident at recollecting non-functional hyper-mutated fake DNA from Roger Delve's laboratory and made a little chain where the non-functional shit that already tried to generate bigger molecules went back to Roger's experiment. The thing is that Roger was working in a way to make functional cell out of inert matter just by changing the ambient and extreme compression. So adding matter that already was trying to make more matter wasn't good. Now all of the matter was all getting compressed in the same place. Going to nuclear levels and almost quantum levels, Roger just saw the molecules doing some funny shit and immediately assumed the DNA were working without even checking the composition of the thing he made. After a few hours, Roger's turn ended, so he put the machine in rest state, so the matter stopped compressing itself and now was expanding. This caused some Big Bang-like micro-explosion and destroyed every weak thing in the room, and Roger suffered major injuries from that. Now some kind of facility police dudes started looking at some resources and then found Kevin committing the little error. Kevin was now considered the cause of this incident, but Kyle declared that he wouldn't fire Kevin because it was an accidented and because Kyle is a fucking idiot, like. For the love of God, Kevin almost killed a dude with that accident, what the fuck? Anyways, now the facility dudes started to not trust Kevin because of that, and now Kevin was mad at the entire universe for no fucking reason. So he used his infinite intelligence to create a little plan. The plan consisted in Kevin going to Roger's laboratory and make the project work. So Kevin snuck into the room 423 at 2:03 a.m. of June 27 of 2002. Once he got inside, he tried to comprehend whatever Roger was doing, but all the papers explaining the stuff were burned to nothing and the computer was dead. So he just tried as hard as he could to remember what the hell was all of that. At 2:51 a.m., one of the workers, Mary, decided to go to check the room because she was hearing some weird noises. When she entered the room, she could see Kevin randomly dropping a lot of stuff to a bucket while smashing everything using a hammer. She asked him what the hell he was doing. And Kevin responded that Roger told him to make some stuff in the lab before getting internated in the hospital. Now Kevin just started doing some things that looked like a scientific experiment, so he looks like if whatever he said was true. He opened a giant tank full of oxygenated water and started adding a lot of random stuff to it, like solid oxygen, ozone particles, some random Nobel gases, a bunch of indeterminated macromolecules, carbon and synthesized astatine. He closed the tank and started adding a bit of nuclear energy and electricity to it. Mary seemed confused and then proceeded to ask what the fuck he was doing. Kevin tried to give the most convincing answer ever, but then some green gas started coming from the tank. Kevin accidentally inhaled a bit of the gas and now he started acting like a drunk bitch. Mary ended up inhaling it too, so now both of them were drunk bitches and had sex in a room where someone almost fucking died a day ago. Amazing. Random facility pseudopolice noticed the gas after 23 minutes, so they went to see what was happening. Kevin and Mary stopped doing their shit and ran out of the room, taking advantage of the gas that covered all the surroundings. At the very next day, the room 423 was now declared in quarantine for 15 days while the specialists removed all the gas from the outside because being in the inside could be dangerous. Mary didn't remember a shit from yesterday and Kevin was just being the most normal dude ever. After 15 days, Kyle went to check the room. There was some big green thing moving, so Kyle left the room because he is a fucking coward and decided to ask to literally anyone to go in the room and see what the hell was that thing. Kevin raised his hand and said he wanted to see. Kyle accepted because Kevin was already used as a laboratory rat before, so he could be used like that again. Kevin entered the room and touched the green thing. It apparently was a green human female without any knowledge about anything. Kevin left the room and told everyone what he saw and also confessed to the supposed experiment he did in that place. Everyone was confused and amazed in some way. They congratulated Kevin for being able to generate a super complex living being just from inert matter just by changing the ambient, and now started doing serious investigation to the green thing. Kevin wanted to name it Atmosphere because it sounded cool, but he committed a little typo in the document and now the green thing was officially called Atomosphere. Now with the name given to the specimen, it was time for the complex analysis. While the analysis was going on, Atomosphere started gaining reasoning capabilities based on the behavior of the workers, so now people decided to do therapies of language, behavior, learning and other stuff. Mary took care of the behavior therapy, Maishas of the language, Hannah of the learning, and some other people for the other stuff. After 1 month, the main analysis was finished. Here are the results of the analysis of Atomosphere. Her intern systems are mammal-like, she hasn't any intern organs protect her like bones, her skin was very hard due to its composition, her atomical structure allowed the being to stretch itself a bit. She could grow like almost every living being. She didn't exactly needed to eat because she could absorb energy from all of her skin. Her main composition was a lot of ozone particles. Her mind was very naive and instinct-based, but it could evolve and learn stuff at a very high speed. This is the most important stuff. The rest of the results are just very technical shit that it is not relevant to the story. The facility decided that it was a good idea to let this specimen take decisions and live free in the world, so they just did a simple question to her. What name do you want to be given? Atomosphere looked at herself for a few seconds, and then responded, Emerald. Now Atomosphere had an actual name and was let free. Kyle and some ministry dudes made a national announcement about it, and it was basically a cool event. Mary had to go to her house because some pregnancy shit, and now was time for the facility to create more of this specimens to keep the species alive. So they tried to create more of this thing using other stuff, but each time they did, something different happened. There were 8 times where they tried to create something like a tomosphere. Most of the resultant beincs died at 5 to 10 days. The one that lasted the most was a yellow one that lived for 1 month. After all of these experiments, they assumed that a tomosphere probably died too. All of the specimens' names ended in sphere, mainly to reference the first specimen's scientific name. Here's a list of all the 8 specimens they created: toposphere, catasphere, francosphere, genosphere, astenosphere, lithosphere, negasphere and organosphere. After all these failed attempts, Kyle cancelled the project and now nothing was working and they were losing a lot of money. But there was an experiment that was already running. This was made by Kevin too. He was replacing all the ozone with dioxygen. But right when the dioxygen entered the tank, a little error in the 4, 5 and 6th dimension happened, causing the dioxygen to just disappear, and now it was replaced by -6° absolute nothing. This caused the new being to be its own dimension, so the being lived in all the space that coordinated with its dimension's properties, and it couldn't escape from it except using any dimension after the 3rd. The being had the form of an human, but it had a bit of parasitory properties. The being rapidly took consciousness. The being broke the tank, making the dimension that contained it expand like some kind of liquid to everything in a 5-kilometer radius. It started attacking every living thing in the place, apparently to absorb their minds and doing some TL cheating to keep its own dimension alive. The being was just following its natural instincts, so it didn't have any remorse for anything it was doing. But as everyone tried to defend themselves, the being started gaining a bit of reasoning. But the being didn't feel bad for the lives taken. The being actually started enjoying it. So now it was killing for instinct and for entertainment. The being killed almost everything the facility, except one last guy, Kevin. Kevin was hiding behind a van that the facility had. But after a while, the being found Kevin and just looked at him with a serious expression. Kevin was crying and begging for his life. His expression was of true absolute fear and despair. The being just kept staring at him. Then it smiled and let Kevin go. Kevin ran out of the facility and became one of the 2 survivors from the April 22th of 2003 incident. The being tried to leave the facility but it couldn't for some dimensional space thing. Now Kevin continued to do facility logs number 136 to number 144 explaining the situation and warning people to never get close to the facility's terrain. He used a little robot to go there just for security stuff, looking at the being doing its own stuff from a safe distance. After like 16 days, the liquid from the tank almost got fully evaporated. The being was just there trying to do anything to escape, and then suddenly, the being just disappeared, and the liquid was now gone. Kevin was confused and tried to explain a bit in facility log number 143 by saying some stuff like it may could just disappeared because the universe didn't know how to react if and space doesn't have enough space, or maybe it just clipped through another dimension. After 2 days, Kevin went again to the facility's terrain. There was nothing there, just a bunch of dust and sand. Kevin then proceeded to record the facility log number 144. He said that the menace was probably destroyed, and if not, then it was just way too far from them to be a menace anymore. All of this incident is kept as a secret. The being was now in a weird place that is now called Empty Void. The being fell in the down half of it together with its personal dimension. Due to not being nothing in the empty void, its dimension could expand easily through the entire half of the EV. The other half was still empty because there was some kind of negative gravity thing there. Now the being had absolute control of this half, the being that surprisingly already knew how to talk, called it the void. Current scientifics call it dark side of the empty void, or DSOTEV to abbreviate. Kevin called this being Exosphere because he thought it was actually made dioxygen. Now Kevin had no job and no money and basically no everything, so he went back to university and then became a teacher. Exosphere now spends its time using the plus third-dimensional logic to get lives and kill them. That's the end. Thanks for living.